Hello and welcome to another episode of the Climate Conundrum podcast, your hopefully go to source for untangling all the knotty issues of climate change through casual conversations with experts. I'm Sanika Divanji, your host, and today we're diving headfirst into the complexities of waste management and its profound impact on our planet and on us as well. Hold on to your recycling bins, hold on to your coffee cups. We've got a stellar guest with us today. Give a warm welcome to Hamsa. Hamsa Iyer is a sustainability maven who walks the talk in every sense of the phrase when it comes to sustainability, sustainable living, and actually practicing what she preaches. We're going to talk to her about different ideas related to waste management on an individual level, on a community level. I've got some nice questions, which are also a little bit of fun and games. So hopefully this topic does not become as boring as people make it out to be, because Hamza is here to prove that it's not, and that she has a lot of fun doing what she does. So to give a little quick brief about what Hamza does and her background, she has a decade of experience in the social and development sector. She brings with her a wealth of knowledge and a contagious enthusiasm for crafting personal and practical solutions to waste management. She's also the general manager of Pro Earth Ecosystems Private Limited. She's on the front lines on the fight against waste and looks after the strategy, communications, customer relations, and also interested in diversifying their interventions in waste management. So yeah, welcome and thank you for your time, Hamsa. I know you have
Most
a
welcome. Thanks. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
All right, so we are going to dig into this topic right away. I have a whole list of questions which we kind of have discussed already. Um, it's also March 30th today, which is the International Day of Zero Waste. So it's a great coincidence that we are recording it today and can speak about this important issue. So yeah, let's celebrate in our own way. Yeah, Hamsa, I'm so glad you're here, and there's so many questions to dive into. But I think I want to start with your background. Like, waste management doesn't sound like the most obvious choice of a career because it's not talked about when we're probably in the stage of choosing what we want to do. So, how did you get into this? What led you to this path?
So, in your 20s, you're always like, there's this young blood that is boiling to want to do something really big. So, a friend of mine, his mother was standing for MLA elections in Bangalore and she needed help. She was putting together a team, and I thought, let's just be around and help her to see how this works. And in my tryst with seeing democracy up front, I encountered waste management, and waste management was something she just showed how she was doing composting in her backyard, and it felt very novel to see that with little effort you're able to do something which has meaning at a larger scale. And at that point of time, when she showed me how to do composting, that's Meenakshi Bharat, who I learned composting from. And then I met Vani Murthy, who's now very popular on Instagram as Worm Rani. And they all taught me composting. And there was this entire camaraderie that one saw for a city level waste management that started at home. That sort of opened doors, eyes, hearts in this space. And waste is very, when I see waste, it's like, oh, Disneyland, right? That's the feeling that I get. And there's so much that one can do in that space. There's so much that's missing. There is plenty that we need to come together for. And I saw all of that come together. Formally, of course, I've learned economics and statistics in my bachelor's, did my postgraduate in urban and rural development, and then specialized in environmental services. And waste management came in at that right period of where, theory and practice both came together.
Right.
But I also feel like I've been very fortunate to meet people who have positioned in life very well. They've walked into my journey. I walked into their journey. And, all the questions that we asked today, why is there a waste collection fleet? How are informal workers, connected in this system. You interface and you see all of that. So it's not like a very unidisciplinary thing. It's anyway the era of multidisciplinary work. You see that in waste management largely. And I'm very glad that, whatever my diverse background has been, has helped me to, put it all together for this larger picture.
I love this. Yeah, this is an organic journey, and now you're really deep into it, so you can inspire some more people to follow the same
Sure.
path. Yeah. So Hamza, now when we're talking about waste management, right? One of the first questions that comes to my mind is, I stay in a housing society, and the way I see it, I produce whatever trash in a day, wet waste, dry waste. And as far as I'm concerned, I keep the trash cans outside my door every morning. The person who collects it comes, takes it away, and that's the end of the story for me. I don't have to think about it further. But I think I really want to know, what is this life cycle of the trash we throw out? Where does it go? Who deals with it? And how are things finally segregated and disposed of?
Right. So, for most people, like you said, right, it's something that you just leave outside your door and you're just wondering where it goes. I feel like there's so much more that happens to our waste when it leaves our doorstep. So typically in a housing society, you either have a housekeeping agency or you interact with a waste worker directly at your door. And when that waste worker picks it up, it is transferred to a vehicle, which is typically like a 407 or, a Bolero kind of a vehicle that is making rounds. And from one vehicle to another, it sees a transfer at the transfer station. So you have pockets in the city which literally stinks, and it's essentially people's waste that is being, shifted from one truck to another. When this happens, the larger truck takes it to a place that we all like to call away. Where is that away? And I often ask, where do you think this away is? Is it some black box in, far away in our city? Is it something? It's a quaint little village in most cases, right? Which is also producing vegetables and other, produce for the city. And I wouldn't want to buy vegetables from the place where my garbage is being dumped, right? Nobody should want to consume food like that. But beyond that thought, also, the away sees a lot of nightmares because of our garbage. So it's the land is polluted, the water is polluted, the air is polluted. All because we don't have a better system to manage our waste.
Yeah.
And that's a question that it's something that we have to understand. The real practice starts at home, and the real practice is at the community level. Only if we achieve these two can we actually do waste management at the city level. It's not an either or approach. It's not like the city has to do it. Part of the reason why this is a difficult change for a lot of people is also because the municipal system for a very long time has been picking up, waste for free. Despite us having legislative support that, it is not supposed to be picked for free for about 20 years, we're still struggling with this. And it's true for tier 1, tier 2 cities where it is the paradox is that you want people to shift to a system, but people still want the free system. So this is where we have to navigate and figure out. And hopefully today in our conversation, we'll also talk about processing and processing charges and how all of that works. So if the trash is going into somebody's land or somebody's water body, it's coming back to us also. In the sense, there is a circularity. We are dumping and we are consuming something out of that dump through our commons. And there's a thing where, commons are basically mitti, prithvi, jal, akash. These three pieces are something that we all share. It's not something that is, you can put in a box and say ki yahan pollution is vacuum mein rahega. It's not like that. So that is what happens to most of the trash. Landfills or dumping grounds that we speak about are places where things are just being piled up into a big mountain, And those mountains just keep growing and growing and growing. Pune city generates about 3,200 metric tons of waste every day. It rises a little bit more during festivities. Bombay sees somewhere about 10,000 tons per day across three landfills, Deonar being the largest one. And Delhi's Okla landfill is one of the top 10 height-wise tallest landfills. Actually, Bombay also makes it to that list. So I find it very interesting that we are not willing to. So it's also very interesting to see how people are not seeing these statistics, right? So we're talking about the Leaning Tower of Pisa being a certain height, Mount Everest being a certain height, but as humanity, we're also contributing to really tall dumping grounds.
I
How
actually
long?
saw this as a data visualization of which is the biggest landfill. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, from what I hear, two of those are in India, the biggest global landfill.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And landfills catch fire, right? Because we have a lot of plastic that gets dumped. It's very volatile. It's something that catches fire very quickly, and these fires don't douse because there is always another piece of plastic that will catch fire. So we're running in a vicious circle. So we have to stop somewhere.
And yeah, the climate, like the temperatures are rising. At the same time, people are actually working in these landfills. So this is not just a threat to the environment, but actual threat to the immediate life
Yes.
around these
Yes.
issues as well.
Yeah.
So what about policies then? What is India doing in terms of
We've been very progressive in terms of policy, right? There was a recent news that France has now mandate for composting, and now there's a legislative around that. We've actually had legislation 25 years ago. It started with this lady called Almitra Patel who put a case in Supreme Court, and that became the benchmark, verdict for paving the way for waste management rules. Waste management rules never existed in India before that. Typically, you saw like one common container or barasa. There used to be this cement goal structure that would be put, and people would just dump waste wherever. You don't see them anymore also because the new legislation prohibits that, and it's very forward thinking. In 2001, what paved the way, and a lot of us studied this in school, was you have to segregate two ways. The rule has seen iterations over the years, and the latest one being in 2019, which now paves the way for two more sets of waste streams. The third one being, sanitary waste. So we recognize that there are diapers, condoms, sanitary pads, sharps, things that people should not be touching. Because it obviously comes in the way of providing waste workers dignity. And that I feel is another very progressive step. Pune actually has done a further iteration of that by the waste workers co-op called Swachh, who did a red dot campaign around that. So it mandates that sanitary waste be wrapped in newspaper with a red dot so that everybody understands. And it's now being taken universally to promote that kind of dignity for waste workers. The fourth stream that the legislation also talks about is garden waste. And I think garden waste is a pot of black gold that we're all sitting on, not realizing the potential it has to sequester carbon in our cities. And you need carbon for building soil diversity. You speak to any agricultural expert or climate change expert, they will talk about soil carbon sequestration as a key piece to mitigating climate change. And I think the waste stream has a lot of resources in that space to actually put things back into use. So the legislation is already supporting that, and I think we're way ahead of our times to do that. Also, we're a tropical country, right? So you see diversity coming at different spaces. So food is diverse, people are diverse. So you encounter that even in waste. And composting in a tropical climate is very easy. It's slightly difficult when you go into colder spaces. It's not impossible. You just need a design piece to it. But this is something I feel like it's coming together at the very right space. the one place where we do need improvement and gap is that as legislation, and this is also true globally, is we've not understood the difference between knowing and acting, right?
Okay.
So I often ask people, do you know what is waste segregation? And almost about 99% of the hands will come up.
Hmm.
And enough of, environmental science and, EVS in schools have, achieved this. Right? And great kudos job to, having bombarded that. But how many of us segregated home? And almost about 80% of the hands will come down.
Correct.
So knowing that there is segregation and actually not segregating are really two different pieces. And we've got to bridge that gap. So we now need legislation and implementation to cover that gap. And there's also this another spectrum that's now coming in. So there's knowing, there's acting, and then there's indifference, right? So suddenly the acting part has gone away. So there's only knowing and there's indifference. And if you have this, it will not help you do waste management. So that is something that we need to understand as real-time feedback, and we need to, improve on that.
Yeah, is it because, like, is the indifference coming because people don't really know what is happening with waste issues? People probably haven't come across the pictures of the landfills, and actually it's hard to miss these news because every summer all newspapers carry these events, and they're not just some remote event, right? These are happening across country in multiple landfills as the temperatures go up. Also, sometimes we hear about it in monsoons when the runoff water actually gets contaminated and ends up having health effects. So I wonder why is this indifference and where is it coming from?
So one is that the villages are still taking our waste in, right? So there are 3,500 landfills in the country. Okay, recorded ones. I'm pretty sure there are ones that exist, not on paper also. It's happening because we're keeping them open. And as long as we keep them open and we do a central piece approach, this will happen because it will always be convenient to dump than to process.
Correct.
And systematically, if we don't change this, even though the legislation gives you enough and more leeway to do, systematic implementation towards processing, we're not doing that enough as implementation. It's there on paper, but it's not there in practice. So I think that is a goal that we will have to move. So something that we'll have to think a little more on how to put that. And it's like, jab tak koi leke ja raha hai, why will you change, right? So it's one of those things. It's very convenient to just leave it out because there are people who need also jobs. There are people who are willing to, just take it away. And there is somebody who's saying it's okay to pollute the land. So the entire chain has to change. It has to be in favor of processing and not in favor of, dumping. We have to change that.
That's when hard stops probably come handy. I guess on an international level as well, right? This is what is happening now. Many countries are refusing to take so-called developed countries as waste, and the moment they have said no, these developed countries are now scrambling to find other ways
Solutions
to put it out there. Yeah. So I guess hard stop at a local level is also necessary and something that we should.
Yes, we've actually seen this in our country. So in 2013, Bangalore saw a huge transformation, right? And that transformation also held a certain level of importance for the other neighboring states. They said that there is Mandur and there was Mavallipura, two villages that were taking Bangalore's waste. By the way, they still continue to take waste till date. And they said no more dumping. They just said bus, enough now. And so there was police security arranged for garbage trucks to enter the village.
Okay.
This was happening in a country where women are not protected, garbage is being protected. And it's the irony of ironies, right? You would think that something like this would happen. And but that got Bangalore to think very differently when the villagers said no. So within like 8 months' time, there was a segregation rule in place. They were doing more active engagement with citizens. Fairly, the city came together. This uniform segregation rule came into place. Couple of years later, the Paura Karmikas, what we call as the waste workers here, got empowered with ID cards. They were given social security through the state. Uniforms came into picture.
Okay.
Protective gear came into picture. And by 2014 and 2015, there were Kartavya centers. Okay, there were responsibility centers called as dry waste collection centers, DWCCs. And operation of each DWCC was handed over to the waste picker organization or to a couple of agencies to manage all the dry waste and other things. So really there is momentum. If you want to do it, you can do it. It's not a impossible ask or it's not a impossible thing.
So
But
this you mentioned as a Bangalore case study.
yeah,
And
there are
guessing this
multiple
can be
case
scaled
studies.
up.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so see here, no, having a great government machinery, proactive machinery works very well. Okay. The same machinery can also go against you. So what is now happening in BBMP is BBMP is Brihad Bengaluru Mahanagar Palike, right? It's like a municipal corporation there. Now the DWCCs are struggling because the proactive governance has gone. And there are all sorts of issues. They're saying this agency will not be allowed, that agency will not be allowed. All sorts of things are happening there. So you also see in many cases where there is steward leadership that comes in from the administrative wing, things move a lot faster. Because they've got to be the ones to say this is not going to happen. You're seeing that in PCMC also. The municipal commissioner Shekhar Singh is very proactive. He comes to these public hearings. He talks to the public. He is engaging with them. He's telling them that why they need to pay for the processing for themselves. And unless the government agencies do it, it's very, very difficult to
Of course.
clear
It's
through.
a
So
huge machinery that needs to be put into place. And also, I guess at the same time, there's this awareness and sort of activating people to start small at the community level.
yeah. So
Right.
need to think more on how we do that. So there's something called as Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, right? Which talks about toilets and whatever. So Swachh Bharat Abhiyan SBA 2.0 talks about waste management. And SBA 2.0 also talks about how municipal corporations are rated. So normally you always see Indore is number 1 in waste management, right? Because they did the legwork 10 years ago. They were not waiting for something to come through. And these are things that we have to understand that it takes 10 years to pay off. आपको वो करते रहना है. It's not like you set it up and then you leave it and then you move on. It's not one of those things. It is something that you establish, set, consistently run. So
Yeah, I can imagine that this is a long run process, but also so rewarding in the end. Like
yes.
I always wonder, like, what will happen if our cities are cleaner? What will happen to the overall, general hygiene, of course, but as along with it, it's also just the mental health of feeling nice that you are in a place which is cleaner. It is safer. There's no plastic and trash or just like open drainages around, and that makes a huge difference in overall life of the citizens. Yeah. So Hamza, what is the next question on my mind is there's this buzzword lately, right? First of all, there's a linear approach to consumption that we all know about, that there is to produce, we use it, all the things, and then we dispose of it. And that's becoming more and more the norm as capitalism is becoming more and more the norm. But then there is this anti-capitalistic, so to say, idea that is also growing roots and becoming the buzzword that I talked about, which is circularity and circular economy. I know you are very passionate about it and you actively use that approach in your own lifestyle. So can you help explain a little more about what circularity means?
Sure. So there is a material which is molded into something, and then that material after its life, takes another form. if you just leave it like this, you'll have something at the end of it called as a byproduct of waste, right? And where does that go? How does that, come back into creating the same material again? The simplest example I always give is, you have food, you cook food, you have wet waste at the end of it. You have like scraps of vegetable peels, of eggshells, etc., etc. And then it's there. If it is not going back into soil to grow more food, it's a broken circular system. If it is going and completing that cycle, then that's circularity. In case of plastics, we often see that, there are milk bags that are there, right? Typically, these are LD bags, which is low density polyethylene bags. And these are, LD can become LD without any additives.
Okay.
You can just convert that. It doesn't require any new additional virgin plastic. So it's called closed loop recycling, right? So there's no new material added to this in the process. But say, for example, you have one of these, right? These black color plastic dabbas that often come.
Takeaway container.
Takeaway boxes, right?
Right.
This black color box is very difficult to recycle, one, because it's black in color. So it has no value, no market value connected to it. And this has seen some kind of additives, like there are different types of plastics that have gone into this to make it into this particular. So it's very flexible that way, right? You can see how different this is. So it's not the same as what you would see as a PET bottle, which is our mineral water bottles. So some type of plastics can, without any new pieces into it, they become the same. These type of plastics, like also garbage bags and anything black in color, typically means a lot of stuff has gone into it, and they're very difficult to recycle.
Plastic being melted together to create this like
Yes.
last mile byproduct.
So now what happens to this is an answer that is very scary. कुछ नहीं हो सकता है इसके बाद में. Maybe it can continue to be only a black dabba, but beyond that, it's very difficult to recycle. And there's a lot of literature that is now coming in, because enough and more people are now interested in doing this. And I think it's very nice to see everybody wanting to solve different puzzles of that of that entire jigsaw piece, right? So when you put more plastic into an existing type of plastic, that's open loop recycling. Okay, so it means it's not completely circular, but there's a small opening at the end of it. You're not sure कि वो पूरा का पूरा वही material में वापस आएगा. So we have to understand circularity like this. And what I feel is we've not made the last mile connect in understanding where we need them and where we don't need them, right? Because there's still an away that's taking everything. And that system by design is telling you, you can send different things, we'll just dump it in one place and we'll figure out what to do with it later. But time is really running out on that. So that is something that circularity can break. It's become a buzzword because I think enough of us are also talking about it. So and it's also that different people are involved in the process. So the informal economy does a fairly large share of its work too for things to be recyclable. They scavenge, they get all of this, they sort it, and you have to aggregate. Things will only get recycled if you have a certain volume. Without that, the technology and all of that doesn't work. Correct. And that's correct also, because you need a certain economies of scale to come into picture to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also because a lot more people are taking interest in it economically, right? There's new startups, there's new businesses kind of trying to figure out how we can turn this into some usable waste or into fine grade. I've seen some examples where there are fine grade pellets being made, which can be used for road construction, which can be probably made into some other products and things. So I guess brands, even bigger brands, are realizing that there's no way out. They have to step up, and consumers are demanding it. So need to add the sustainability label to their products as well, which is a good thing. I wouldn't say I wouldn't critique this, because at least there's some effort happening, and the more consumers demand,
yes,
circularity becomes more of a natural course of things.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Hamza, India is, like you said, right? It's a huge country with their own local waste issues. Everybody, different states have different policies in place, or even the attitude towards looking at waste, like Indore being the cleanest city for consecutively many years now, versus Bangalore, or there's Delhi, and then we're sitting here in Pune. So, the waste is also very diverse in the country. What are some unique challenges or quirks that you face that, say, maybe folks in other parts of the world wouldn't even think about?
One is that we believe children will solve this problem, and not adults. That when it comes to learning segregation, that children must learn segregation when the adults are generating the trash. It's one of those things where I feel like they deserve to inherit the solution from us and not the problem.
Yeah.
Because the solution is so simple, it's so straightforward that you don't have to think too much about going there. We're struggling there, and while yes, I agree, children must know what they need to do. The adults also need to understand how they need to behave. And when you do it, your child will do it much more easily, right? So that's one quirk in the Indian context that I feel is very, very important. The second piece is there's something about this space that women get much better than men. Also because we are interfacing garbage, waste, soil far more in our lives than men do. And I think we need more effort and sustainability initiatives that are run by men. It's an innate thing. Women are regenerative biologically. And we see it in conversations when we're talking to managing committees in societies, that wherever there are women members, the case to point is already clear and sold. There's no conversation happening on why. There's more conversation on how, and by when we can get this going. So that's very interesting to see. But we are also seeing another piece where a lot of foreign solutions are being presented in the Indian context. Say, for example, there was this news article and keeps floating around that Sweden is importing its waste from, neighboring countries. So it works because Sweden is incinerating that and creating energy for themselves. And waste to incineration has, forever been a greenwash in our country that is being sold. So people are investing in technologies like, heater-based composting or thermal composting.
Right.
You don't need that. We're a tropical country. We've got enough heat coming in from the sun. I would say that's a far more energy efficient way to cope with that, rather than, look at some of these technologies which have huge energy overheads. And also I think there's a thing, no, like if the West is doing it, it must be really great, right? So there is that complex that comes in.
Correct.
You see it in parts of that. So we're seeing a lot of failed solutions. One beautiful failed solution is garbage chutes. And everybody loves it. So there's also a legislative piece to this. In some buildings, it is mandated that they have to install chutes because there are building bylaws that they have to follow. But this system doesn't work. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, how to clean the chute if you use it for years? I guess that already is going to be a problem in a hot country.
Yeah, and imagine from the 22nd floor, somebody throws a tender coconut.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the speed at which it will? So we met somebody who had to get the entire garbage room cleaned up because the coconut broke the dustbin. A tender coconut broke the dustbin and splattered kachra all over the garbage room. Can you just imagine that sight? It's such ick. And imagine glass bottles being thrown like that.
Yeah. There's so many other things that would be hazardous.
Yeah, and see, we're not picturing people cleaning up at the end of these rooms, right? So it's very out of sight, out of mind for us.
I think that's always the issue with waste, right? We forget the human element in there. The people who are working in the sector, who are going to pick up the kind of issues they face. I think empathy is lost on that front. And we need to probably bring it back. I mean, I guess you have far more stories to tell on this than one would really like.
It's amazing. Until we take videos as an agency and send people, they don't even realize that there are people who are touching their garbage. It's that out of sight, out of mind, you know. And here's what I don't understand. Till 10 minutes ago, when you were making a cucumber salad, the cucumber is very good. It's you know, it's health, it's nutrition. So what is so threatening about the cucumber peel after you've made the salad that is making you feel ick? It's something that we are going wrong with hand practice, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think in India, local solutions have always existed because I guess as a society we have been circular for far long than what we give credit to ourselves for. I remember I was in Germany for a few years, and Germans are like really strict about their segregation. You have to separate glass bottles depending on their color. Plastic goes different. Paper is a separate thing. Organic waste. It's a whole 7-8 bin process on a daily basis, and people take pride in doing that. In fact, you get complete like eyeballed if you have thrown something wrong and someone has seen you. So that's as a society they take it very seriously. Um, I always used to think and have these discussions with my friends there that in India, nothing anyway sort of goes to waste because um, there are these people who would come and take your trash and actually make money out of it. Their livelihood depended on it. Now, I'm not passing any social commentary on the good or the bad of this. It has been the way it is. Some people can make money out of the circularity that this practice offers. Across India, I guess
And they should, right? There are so many
Right.
efforts. There's so many efforts. They should be making money out of it. Otherwise, it just doesn't add up.
And without money, I think no solution really sustains for a long period of time. There's always money involved at the end of the day. So in Marathi, we call this Bhangarwala. I guess across different parts of the country, there's different names for the same job. But for people who don't know what I'm talking about, these are people on a handcart or someone who would come and shout out that they are looking for trash that you have to throw away, not organic, obviously, something that is bulky that you don't know where to throw off, like cardboard boxes, old containers, anything basically. And then they would go back into the market, separate these pieces and get whatever money out of the metal, out of the plastic, out of the clothes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think these are locally led solutions and we need to talk more about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think imagining people who are processing in the whole waste management cycle is something that we don't often do because we choose to not see it. It's easier to not see it. So, for example, in India, there's always been a ghanta gadi system. You know, somebody's ringing a bell and everybody would know whether they're coming down. They have to come down, give their kachra to the truck. They have to give it to the gadi.
It's not just ice cream.
Yeah, so you see people, right? And you see people in very, difficult conditions. Somebody has to be on that gadi for like what, 5-6 hours. It's a lot of work. Similarly, waste pickers also do a lot of work. Waste workers also do a lot of work. The collection agency in your building is also doing a lot of work. But we have to think as not as a city at this level, but multiple parts of the city that can take efforts in be providing some of these solutions. So very, very important to know that people are also part of the solution here.
I think just addressing it makes us come face to face with our own guilt of the kind of lack of safety measures or just basic dignity that we have are ignored. And so that I guess that's why it's easier to ignore than address. But I'm glad there are people like you who are actually taking this head on and working towards these issues. Right? What is the weirdest or the most unexpected thing that you've come across in the middle of a waste management operation?
So it's interesting. Somebody introduced us the other day saying, "Hi, this is Hamsa and Anil, and they're into garbaging." Okay, so So, so that is, so I think we've become a verb in some sense. We
It
are no
should
longer
probably
just
become a verb.
into garbaging, and I really liked it because it is ing. It implies that
Yeah,
it's a continuous process,
yeah.
and I think that's very endearing to see. We've of course also encountered some very difficult situations where people say, oh, I am so and so years old, and are you really expecting me to wash my dustbin at this age? So you also come some of those things across. We've also had people who have, outrightly just refused that we will not give you segregated waste. And it's very funny because until we told them that this waste is going to a certain place, they really didn't care too much. And
Hmm.
suddenly, when we told them that they have to behave in a certain way for the larger good, there's this resistance, there's this sudden ownership that this is my kachra and I will do what I have to do. So that's very funny to see.
Yeah,
Um, and in our line of work, right, we do hear no a lot often.
I can imagine.
ये नहीं हो
Honestly,
सकता.
yeah.
Yes. So it's like you have 5 broad reasons why people that we encounter every day.
Hmm.
Uh, why should I do it is the first one. Second is, even if I do it, I'm the only one doing it. Nobody else is going to do it. The third one is, ये हमारे society में चलेगा ही नहीं चलेगा. Why are you charging me for something like this?
Hmm.
It is supposed to be taken for free of cost. And then there is the eternal thing, even if we do it as a community, you think everybody else is going to do. So there's this attachment that, I cannot do this alone is an
Hmm.
underlying piece that comes out. I find that very interesting because if you do something as a unit alone, it's the easiest way to go about with it. So even in my journey, right, when I started composting, I realized my dustbin stopped smelling the next day because I was taking away the smelly piece out of it.
Hmm.
And then when I was keeping all my recyclables separate and I was giving it to another agency, again, my dependency on the central system completely reduced.
Oh, wow.
And when I shifted to sanitary reusable cloth pads and to the menstrual cup, I didn't need that system at all because I had everything that I could do on my own. So
Yeah.
actually, if you look at it, if you do it at your level, your dependency on there need not be any Mavaldipura, there need not be any Moshi landfill, there need not be all of that. So the smallest circle is actually the easiest one to
Hmm.
uh, close the loop. It gets tougher as the circle becomes bigger and bigger, the community, the society, the lane, the ward level. It's
Yeah.
far difficult because you have to think of systems that will work for everyone.
So the whole point of this podcast is to try and understand concepts about climate-related issues and how different areas of our life are affected, because of climate change, and also how climate change is affected because of our choices and lifestyles. And I'm glad you brought this up because I feel like um, I have been trying to figure out how I can individually reduce waste, try to also take a hard look at my own consumption patterns. Um, and I think that's where one element really comes forth, which is that of composting. I remember when I spoke to you about the podcast and whether you will agree to do this interview, the first question I had on mind was, that's okay that we'll do this interview, but can you also on the side help me set up the composting pit? Because I've tried it once and I've failed. And now there's this sort of fear in like 100 questions in my mind. Sometimes I would really appreciate if you could take us through like the basics of what composting is.
So there are two parts to composting, right? One is don't look at it necessarily as a climate change action all the time. Some people will take that stand. Do it also because it's something new that you can add to your life. It's very nice and very endearing to see things break down in nature at their own pace.
Not just us.
So I always say, you define your starting point. Why you doing what you're doing here is very important. I started off because I just saw it. I was very fascinated with it, and it just gave me lots of things. I've had free tomatoes, free cucumbers that have grown out of my compost, and it's very nice
Oh.
to see that complete life cycle, right?
Hmm.
So do it if you like the joy of seeing that. Composting is just like making sambar. Okay, it is just, will it be great the first time? Maybe not. Maybe yes, it will. But do it because you will enjoy the process of putting things together. So there is kitchen waste, which is typically green. There are browns like coco peat, dry leaves that are very abundantly available. Of course, the material and all of that will differ. We do composting workshops. You can do in-depth ones if anybody's interested. So you have to marry the two in such a way, using a little bit of culture, and you have to put it in a container, aerobically, where you have holes in the container already done before, and just keep layering that up. And at the end of 45 days, you will realize you actually have good quality compost right in your backyards. You can store them separately, and whenever seasonally you want to add to your kitchen garden, you could do that. If you don't have a kitchen garden, you could just give it to your society garden. It's a nice act. You can think of it like how all of us like watering trees, like, but what if all of us fed those trees good quality compost? They will be healthier. There will be more biodiversity that comes in those trees. So think about it, where it works. I do composting both, in a process called as aerobic composting, which is essentially using air um, for enabling air as a process to do. And I also have vermicompost,
Oh, I
which
love that you have this to show people. Yeah.
yeah, and it smells wonderful, right? You smell petrichor, the smell of first rain when you have your compost. So just imagine
So
in the
this is
peak
very
of summer.
counterintuitive to me because on almost all conversations related to compost start and end with, oh, but it's smelly and I don't want my house to smell. So you're saying this actually smells like fresh earth
Yeah.
with first rains?
Yes, it does. It does. It's because, see, composting needs, like in a sambar, right? You need vegetables, you need dal, you need tamarind, and you need water. In composting, you will also need four things. One is container, one is your wet waste, your carbons, and you will need a little bit of culture. Culture, matlab kya? It is basically it's food, right? Essentially, even if you have any peels or whatever, it's some kind of food for different organisms. So you need microorganisms and microbes to be able to eat that food, break it
Right,
down
right.
without releasing any smell in it. Things will rot in nature. If you leave like a very ripe fruit, it will rot, but it will also smell. In a small scale space like apartments or even bungalows, you will need to do it odorless, because odor is an issue. We understand that.
Yeah.
And when you do odorless composting, you will do it with the use of microbes who will eat the whole thing up and without releasing any foul smell. In aerobic, in biocomposting, the way we do it. There's also anaerobic composting. It's like fermenting. It's like how you would how wine has a certain, I call it fragrance, but it has a certain smell. So it is something that you have to understand, that you can also do it anaerobically, but that is something I don't recommend that, because that has some odors connected to. So
Okay. But that maybe then people who you do it on a large scale, is that better?
you can
What
do you
that
can do
other-
both. See what happens is, even anaerobic composting at one stage shifts to aerobic composting. Okay, it's not like so there's a very popular method called as bokashi, which a lot of people like to do, because you can do it indoors. You don't need to keep it outdoors.
Okay.
In an aerobic composting system, you need to keep it outside, because it needs air. It needs, you're using air to make sure that things break down. Bokashi composting, there are two phases. One is where you're fermenting your food completely, and the food breaks down and releases out all the water. So what is left is like a sludge of your kitchen waste. And that then has to be layered with soil again, and it has to be cured. So it is faster,
Okay.
but it has a smell.
Hmm.
And it needs a certain, stomach to be able to do it.
I see.
It's not something that I would recommend for beginners.
So it's good to know that there is an alternative, and there is a way to do this at home, even in a smaller space, because not everyone has the capacity to have a garden or an outdoor space. So
Yes.
yeah, I'm definitely game and going to try to do this at my place as well. I know that you have some resources online, and also willing to talk about this. So anyone who is similar on my journey as well wants to know more about it, I'm going to put links down in the description so that you can also find more resources and start your journey for composting. While this is all great, right? We can switch to composting. We can switch to all these small individual level changes. Um, these big 3 R's, the reduce, reuse, recycle slogans, can be really hard to actually implement in everyday routines. Now, especially for someone like people with kids, the diapers, or when you're older, I guess just lifestyles are not always in sync with this ideology, and it takes a lot more effort to actually maintain this. Because it's easier for me to just take a plastic bag from the grocery place than to carry my own, and if I've forgotten or something. So what are some tricks that you would suggest to help?
So my 3 R's are not reuse, reduce, and recycle. My 3 R's are refuse, restore, and replenish, and they hold space for me as an individual trying to do what I need to do in this waste management conversation.
Okay.
The first is going out with your own dabbas to get produce, right? So all my local vendors now know me as that dabba didi. Okay, they know that I bring my own. There's like a 4-layer dabba that I will go carrying around, from one place to another, getting whatever I need to, because it's much easier to manage. I don't have to worry about washing that plastic bag and then
Right.
figuring out which bin it goes and how to manage all of that. More often than not, I've been at the receiving end of getting either more produce or getting discounts. And I
Okay.
encourage everybody to please do this. All your
Hmm.
local small scale vendors really get it. Even to buy eggs, I have my own dabba that I can get. There's a proper egg dabba that you get. So you could just
Oh, nice.
bring your eggs and you could come back. And they're all in awe, because for them, for them to make the sale, they have to invest in that plastic bag.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a saving for them. So they're very happy to pass that on to you.
True. I
So
thought about this.
there are plenty of places where you can also take your own bottle to go get your oil, by the way.
Mhm.
You don't need to, get a plastic bottle, or you can just reuse one plastic bottle, keep it clean and get that done. So these are things that I genuinely recommend that people do. In the space of so carrying your own cloth bag, start a cloth bag bank in your office spaces. Have a common space, a nice cardboard box or a hanger where you're leaving these extra cloth bags for people to just carry and bring them back after they've reused it. You can do this as a community. It's a great exercise of how we can all do something together.
Yeah.
Restore is very important for me. It's a combination of repair and putting things back into use. Say for example, a small Shivan Usalliya hai. There's a stitch that has come out.
Hmm.
We have enough tailors who will stitch that back and give it to us. So let's restore what needs to be restored.
Yeah.
Composting also comes here for me, because it's a combination of actually restore and replenish. By putting compost into soil, you're building back soil biodiversity that's lost. So we all know that this is also the age where there is an ecological, restoration is needed. Things are not working as what they were before. Places are hotter. Composting and giving your compost back to soil is a very simple and beautiful example of, doing this.
Hmm.
And replenish is, for me, it's a combination of health plus soil, right? When I shifted to the menstrual cup, yes, I did it from a space of not wanting to make trash,
Hmm.
but I also realized it was way better for my health. It didn't have any rash. I didn't, it saved me a lot of money also in the process.
True.
But it kept me very comfortable. So what if we recharge our souls by shifting to some of these solutions? When you touch soil, when you touch compost, you will realize that your body experiences a rush of pheromones, because we are innately connected to soil. That disconnect has grown very deeply in all of us. And
Hmm.
these are small efforts that we can do. And rather than saying that there are sacrifices to be made, how about we approach them as, experiences to be enjoyed?
Absolutely. I
So
love this idea. Because you're right, like not just these sort of changes, like you mentioned, you carry a dabba, a tiffin, and a steel tiffin is actually so cheap in India to find. Similar with a menstrual cup, right?
with
It's far,
variety,
far
with
cheaper.
variety, you want it in this size, you want it in
Exactly.
this size, you want it flat, you want it
Or you
round. I
want
mean,
all
it's
of them for different needs. It is still so much cheaper in India to buy
yes.
these and use them repeatedly. Second, while you were speaking, the first thought that came to my mind was how it is incredible for your health as well, because you're not eating up these microplastics. These discussions are all over the news lately. My parents have also started getting worried about, oh, we're not going to use plastic containers to heat food because we don't want microplastics. Now at their age, at their generation also, they know that these things are a hazard, and they're now going back to the older ways that they were anyways used to. Carrying your own tiffins was a normal thing. Drinking filter coffee out of those uh,
Tumbler auras, yes, yeah,
tumblers is inherently in our culture, So I guess
yeah.
going back to our roots and using sustainable practices is not so alien. In fact, what is the alienation for us as a society is the use of new, I don't know, plastic or Tupperwares that we
So,
do.
so I want to talk about two initiatives that have happened because of many of us talking about taking our own things. There's an entire refill movement that has come in. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So where you can buy your own laundry detergents, dishwashing detergents, and all of that,
Right.
where you just refill in your own bottles. Okay, so that's one that has come through. Interestingly, this was happening. So there's actually a company called Refill that does this kind of work.
Yes.
Now all the big brands have started doing this in big places like DMart, where you can just take your own container and you can build that out. So
I'm
there is
glad.
a huge
Yeah.
push. There's a huge push. In fact, last year Coke had this ad about
Mm.
where you could just go fill up Coke in your own bottle, and they didn't. They did this. There are multiple issues with Coke, of course, as a
I will
product,
take
whatever.
whatever
But
small headways they make in this
yeah,
space. Yeah. So I guess also
so
we need to appreciate the things that even the worst of the brands that we know are doing, because it's still a positive change than
still a
the.
positive change, right? Because you're changing business as usual, and I think
Mm.
that's the power of individual action going in a certain way. uh it's much easier to organize things when you can just plug and play, rather than why should we be generating so much plastic
Mm.
when the consumption pattern is already clear? Why not go straight to the customer and just give what they need in their own containers? And
Really.
it's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer.
Yeah. I also know of a few coffee shops, for example, who will give you a little discount if you take your own coffee mug, and they'll be
Yes.
happy to provide that.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing how the market mechanism affects businesses, right? And that brings me to the next question of what is happening. We've spoken enough about individual work that is to be put in, and also what we can do in our lives, but how can we encourage businesses and industries in India to adopt more circular or better waste management practices? I want to know if there are any good policies on this front. And second, I want to know if there are any good success stories that you can share from your experience.
Sure. So in the industrial context, right? So industry has, I think, to some level predates or comes as close as the municipal solid waste piece.
Hmm.
Because for them, their industrial safety norms and other things have always been like a conversation for them on the table. But in the last decade, what we've also seen is industry having done a little bit of more overhaul, because for them now sustainability is a integrated vertical across different business units.
Right. Okay.
Um, and it's no longer like an additional exceptional program that they would do. In many cases, it is something that they have to think about, also because there is sustainability reporting that is now coming in. There is also ESG that has now come in for them, and there is of course a struggle because it's very overwhelming to try and do it at the same time. But mm, I think they're a little more inclined to doing it. The place where the differentiation will happen is that you have to go beyond quantification, and the push for processing on site will come much sooner than expected. We can see it in the market. So, for example, we also give service to like a couple of canteens, a couple of network institutions look at putting systems in place for sludge management, for ETP. And see, here you have to understand that it's not just about technology versus process, right? It's a combination of two. So biogas plants are one of the solutions that are proposed to canteens because they can also consume the gas and they can do all of that. But there are also operational difficulties in running those things. For composting, we realized that in a canteen there is a lot of slurry like leftover food. So there's dal, there is there may be some buttermilk, there may be a bunch of other of these liquids that are liquidy like foods that come back for composting. So there, the game changing is to do it without odor because there's a lot of moisture in that food. So we have to look at measures where it can become convenient for them. And industries also have some kind of green spaces marked out in their campuses. So in those campuses, what if you had more biodiversity rich backyards, which doubles up? So here I feel like why we need to do composting has to be very clear, has to be very, very clear. So I think industries really have to understand that there is a technology and there is a process that they will have to follow. So when they look at combining the two, they have to also understand why they're doing it. So are you looking for a solution for your canteen waste because you don't want to give it outside? Or are you looking to compost your canteen waste because you want to have a biodiversity garden? So if you change that goalpost, you'll realize that your willingness to do that is very, very different. And often what happens is you believe in a certain technology because your office in Europe is practicing something like this. And that context is the solution is not very local. When a company looks at a solution for say 5 of its offices, one in Madras, one in Bombay, one in Canada, every solution will have a slight modification, and there has to be room for that modification because it's very locally relevant, right? So in South, you may have more rice-based meals, whereas in the West, you may not have so many rice-based meals. So you need to understand the waste itself looks different. So therefore, your solution may be slightly different. The modularity and the approach may be broadly same, but you need to have a little bit of autonomy in terms of how the solution is played out, right? So this kind of a contextualization, I think the market is realizing that. They've also gone through enough series of failed attempts of trying to do it. And we're now getting a fairly large idea of what they're looking for in terms of final end product. So I think that maturity level is really coming in the market. I think the other game changer in the industry space has also been this entire piece in the international market saying demanding sustainability as a requirement in companies, right? So the EU has a Green Deal, right? The new Green Deal which has come in, and it's a big thing. And companies have to do a couple of business practices. It's now connected to how they operate. So if you want to be getting some of that business, you have to do some of these things. It's not an option anymore. It's not like a voluntary darya dil that you could do because we should do the right thing. It's not like that. That era is over. And you have to
Now there are regulations in place where compliance is stricter.
And if you look at it in the Indian context, most of MIDC and all of these SEZ rules that are there, they also have a compliance reporting for wastewater, effluent water for waste. It's all there. Are those technologies working or not working? That's, I think, a very different conversation. And that itself is like a can of worms that we have to discuss. but it's there, and I think that's a good place for us to understand and start. Um, it's a good baseline to work with. So one of our research entities did garden waste management for Tata Consultancy Services, TCS, where 1 ton of garden waste is processed every day. Like 1,000 kgs is processed
Wow.
every day, and it doesn't go out. It doesn't go out. Every gram is consumed within the campus.
Oh,
These are
nice.
great circularity, and it's been running for over 10 years. Okay. It's not like a, ek baar shuru kar diya aur chhod diya kind of a project.
Okay.
Then Suhana Masala,
Right.
connected with them. And they had like a couple of, expired achar, which got composted, and they grew new mirchi out of that, which again became achar. Right. So
That's so
that is another
nice.
excellent example of
Yeah,
circularity.
yeah.
In our own spaces, we are realizing in our composting projects, people use that into community gardens. They are willing to, what happens is they don't end up buying soil, they don't end up buying chemical fertilizers, and their trees don't require that much maintenance. So they're seeing the benefits of that. There are kitchen gardens that are thriving on this. And I always say that change the goalpost for compost. Don't call it as a solution to just wet waste. It's a solution to a multitude of things.
Okay.
If you put it as that, as a centerpiece, it will work, because everybody will have their own individual need to that compost that then comes together.
And it's also a great mechanism to sort of allow employees to see it live in action. That way they can go back home and continue working on it.
Bilkul.
Same with schools, right?
Bilkul.
These are
Yeah.
places for people to do something as a community, observe the results of it, and then perhaps change their mind on that sort of an issue. Yeah. We've spoken about businesses, the market mechanisms, individual rights and responsibility. I think there's been a good amount of healthy discussion. And I want to break that a little by playing a small game. I want to test if I've understood what you have told so far. So this game is called Trash or Treasure, where you will tell me a couple of commonly thrown away items. And let's say we start with 3, okay? Because I don't want to fail and look like a complete loser if I make a mistake. But yeah, let's try and figure out whether this item that you name is worthy of trash or will it be a treasure.
Okay, so old clothes.
I think that's a treasure.
And
considering it can be reused.
okay, so the
But
answer is
then
mixed.
it also brings to my mind all those big landfills full of fast fashion dump. Yeah, so that's a tricky one. I love what you're going to say next.
So it depends. So a lot of our clothes that we wear are mixed fabrics. So cotton can be recycled if it's only cotton, just like how plastic has, right? You need certain types of plastic. So there are some traditional businesses that have been working for decades in this. So if it is organized by type of cloth, yes, it does get, again, they can pull out the yarn and they do some experiments on that. But say stuff like innerwear, stuff like really super toned clothes, nowhere to go. Unfortunately, that has a landfill. Yeah. So very, 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 it's one of those things that is difficult to figure out. Okay. Construction and debris waste from a home renovation.
This is for sure trash, which makes to landfills, because I don't think there's anything that can be done once cement is mixed.
Yeah, you're right. In most cases, it is dumped not just in landfills, but also in river banks, and it encroaches through all of that. So it destroys riparian zones. But the good news on this is that there has been a lot of work on trying to reuse that existing concrete, pulverize it, and prefabricate it and put it back in.
Okay.
And construction industry will see a lot of changes coming up in this. So PCMC and PMC both have a construction and debris manufacturing facility. Both municipal corporations have a pretty decent, helpline. You could call in, fill in your challan, and they take all of that back. In fact, PCMC has gone one step further and made it mandatory for all new developers to sign in with them, without which they don't give a clearance for that project. You have to fill a certain challan, and you have to avail of their pickup service. And what happens is all of that comes in and becomes paver blocks. So I think that is a very nice way to keep the situation under control. More people need to do that. More municipal
Wow.
corporations.
Okay. As you can hear, I'm sure there's like I'm in a place in a neighborhood in Pune which is surrounded by construction activities. So no matter where I sit, no matter what I do, this thumping construction sound never ends. I am definitely
Yeah,
going to go and ask them whether they know about this rule and whether there's a chance that they can
yeah,
have someone collect all the debris. Because I've already
yeah,
started seeing the signs of all this construction waste being lined up along the streets in my neighborhood, and
yeah.
not a good sign because once monsoon comes, it's gonna all flow and create even more messy situations.
Yeah, that's true. So, interestingly, people do it if they know somebody's watching. I also want to just share that with everyone. So, active citizens are a must in this. It'll be amazing how people behave when they know that somebody's watching. So if they know that you are one of those guys who will, question, and who will tell them ye kyun nahi hua, and in a very nice, polite way,
Yeah.
without threatening, even that nudges them to, actually work with the system and be part of it. So all those watching, just be that guard for your street, and
Go
trust
be the
me, it
polite pain
changes.
in the ass.
Yes,
Citizen.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, last one. Sharps. So say like you have a pair of broken scissors. What do you do with that?
I think I would opt, like I said earlier, give it to the local bhangarwala, the person who comes and collects these to recycle them. But if I can't find someone like that, I'm guessing it goes into landfill because
Yeah, actually, it can be recovered in the system, but just double wrap it in a newspaper before you send it out. Don't send it out as is. That's
wow,
true
okay.
also for broken glass, or also for any broken bulbs and other things that you have.
That's good to know. So the right thing to do here is to wrap this with a double layer of newspaper and then throw it out.
Yes.
Okay, good to know. This helps because I think there are so many questions that come up, but we are going to play that reverse game in a few minutes, where I am going to ask you certain things that I don't
Sure.
understand about how to segregate and manage my
Sure.
waste. Yeah, we'll get to that. But before that, I want to know, so okay, if you imagine that you are the queen of the waste management kingdom, and which you are, right? Which you are. Uh, but what's the first rule or policy you'd put in place to help tackle climate change through better way? And I'm directly, shamelessly linking and taking this leap of logic in claiming that climate change and waste is directly linked. You can
Yeah,
correct
yeah.
if I'm
Yeah, yeah.
wrong, but I think it's evident. So yeah, what is the one rule or policy that you'd immediately put in place for better management?
So one is no more landfills from tomorrow. Like no more central systems of dumping and all of that. That is, I would just like push that immediately. The second is three-way segregation is a must, and it's the era that we just have to do it. It's compulsory for everybody, every waste generator to do it, and let's just do that at our homes, and it'll just happen in the community level. So those are
Can
the.
you help explain what the three ways are? I know of the dry and the wet waste. What is the third one?
So sanitary waste or household rejects is the third one, and that is where diapers, condoms, sanitary pads, anything that has come in contact with any kind of bodily fluid has to just be given separately. There has to be bin to bin transfer. Nobody should touch it. Nobody should have to scavenge through it.
Okay.
And I like doing this in a very simple thing. So wet waste is compostable. Dry waste is recyclable, and the third, this sanitary waste is the only thing that needs to go to a landfill. And even in there, if it comes in a certain way, we can definitely look at, multitude of solutions. So
So you're saying that plastics, cardboards, all the Amazon wrappers, even the things that I love popping, those
bubble
wrap,
wrap.
bubble wraps, all of that goes into dry waste.
Yes.
Your kitchen wastes and organic sort of trash is the wet waste. And then the third one is everything that basically cannot go into either of these, containing medical grade sort of toss throwaways or like used tissues, something like that.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Good to know. Yeah. Thanks, Hamza. This has been very interesting, but we're going to move on because I also want to know about what are some upcoming trends in this sector that excite you, that give you some hope.
So, see, in the Indian context now, we're seeing that the push for processing is going to come. So I think that's one trend that we have to be very market ready. As businesses, as residential societies, as developers, we have to really look at that. And that's a trend that is coming on much faster than we thought. It's also coming because people like us are buying homes. We are the ones who are decision makers now. So we understand overhead costs. We understand that processing costs, that's not a new thing for us. It's an innate way of life. So that's one trend. The second is the era of false green solutions is also dwindling. And, greenwashing is something that all of us understand. We are slightly more enlightened on that. The third piece is there is going to be a lot of work that will come on action, which is how are we going to do behavior change? How are we going to talk about every door being very accountable? And accountability at the door level will one have to be thought out, of course, in detail. But there's enough roadways that are getting people to talk about that. So I think that's the other piece. And the fourth and very important thing is people don't want expensive solutions. They want simple solutions that will work. They want solutions that they will, yes, pay,
Right.
but understand that it shouldn't be a complex thing. So one example we're seeing is immense awareness in developers, in the construction industry, in residents of societies who are saying no to these 24-hour, heat-based composting systems. So that's it's like we don't even have to spell it as experts. It's something that they have realized of years of experience and of failed analogies. So those are very important pieces. The market is driven by our consumption understanding. So I think it's coming. It's coming much stronger.
That's nice. I usually don't see a lot of hope in this sector when I work as a climate communications person. But this feels nice. I think it also helps little bit of the motivation and what you referred to earlier, right? People questioning that if I do it on my own, nobody else is doing, what's the point? I think there is point. There is a point that if you continue, more and more people sort of join in on the bandwagon.
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
That's good to know. So on the podcast, I want to continue sort of helping break stereotypes, and misconceptions about different topics, right? What is the one thing about waste management that you think would totally surprise our listeners? Yeah.
There is a innate belief that somebody else will do it. That is one. It's very sad to see. But I think it's also years of legacy that we're trying to break. So that is one, that somebody else will, take care of this problem. It's not mine to solve. It
Okay.
is the municipality's problem. So I think it's not just the municipality's problem. It is all of our problem together. That is one misconception that's there. The second thing that we often see is we want mechanization in a place which is not required. So it's like me telling I will crush food for you to directly pass it out without it going through your intestine. Right? It doesn't work like that. There is nutrition absorption. There are a lot of other factors. There are roles that every organ does in our body. It's not a shortcut. So composting specifically is a biological process, and you can have mechanization to help that biological process, but mechanization will not replace it. So that is one misconception that everybody believes. Ki bada sa ek machine de do, let it look savvy, let it look good. But if the machine doesn't do its job, it's really useless. So, that kind of a failed misconception. Or for that matter, even the shoots, right? You think that throwing it away at your convenience is making it very convenient for collection. It's not. The collection staff in more than 100 societies are having this as a nightmare. The staff retention in with these agencies is a big problem. People don't show up because they know they get hurt. These shoots are not well designed. They're not well. I mean, in general, if you ask me, the shoot is a problem. We should just keep it shut. So those are things, and the best one of the lot is people think simple is too easy. And सिंपल सोल्यूशन क्यों चाहिए, कुछ अच्छा सा, कुछ कॉम्प्लेक्स सा होना चाहिए. तो ये भी आता है. We hear this also. So those are things that are really sad to see, but like all good things come with failures. I think we will get there. It's good to experience bad solutions also, then you stick with the good one.
Yeah. And then also people realize that what they were being told earlier was actually the right thing, that the responsibility lies on your shoulder. Like you mentioned about mechanization, no matter how much we do that, yeah, sure, there'll be a huge industry that's going to melt all the plastic and create new products out of it. But if you haven't segregated the plastic or the glass, it is not gonna help. You're gonna end up rejecting it. So
Yeah,
it still is a human source problem. So yeah, we need those same solutions. Speaking of segregation, now I have some questions that I'm going to throw at you, right? What is the proper way to dispose of broken or old electronics?
So there are most electronic items are recyclable today. You just have to keep them separately. Don't put them in your regular trash. Don't put them out. I always say keep your recyclables in a big bag rather than in a dabba. Use an old Amazon carton if that makes your life easier. Figure out what works for you. And in electronics, there are 2-3 things that have changed. So one is tube lights, CFL bulbs, and printer cartridges. They're very difficult. They need to go to an MEPL identified landfill site.
Okay.
We accept some of those. The municipal system doesn't accept those because we have a dismantler who knows where to take it. And he has the authorization to take that. So, we should do, you need to, make sure that it is just handed over. There are enough and more collection campaigns and drives that happen for electronic waste disposal. Just plug into some of those and, that's the easiest way to get it done.
And if I miss out on these, do like local governments have any provisions that I can call them up or like reach out?
No. So in Pune, there are tie-ups with like a couple of organizations with PMC, of course, endorses. So there's Poonam that does this doorstep collection. There is Vijay Sales and Chroma outlets where you can go drop off your electronics. You can also come to our office. We also accept it and we take that. So yeah, we can figure. I mean, there are many ways that we can plug and play.
Yeah, good to know. So I recently moved houses and I had to dispose of an old mattress. The waste guy who comes to collect it, he completely refused. I was making a new mattress, so I asked the person who was making the new mattress that would you take the old one? That way you can actually use that material. And he looked at me and he said, no, in the coldest manner ever. So now I was stuck with this huge, heavy old mattress that I don't know what to do with. So what do I do with it?
Okay. So if it's a very badly in shape mattress, then it just goes to the landfill. But if so you have to understand what goes into the mattress also, right? So if you have a cotton one, most of these Gadi guys will actually
Yes.
know how to
I wish
warp
I
it and
had
then
one,
put it
and
back.
that actually prompted me to make the new one as a full cotton
Cotton
one,
one.
because
Yeah.
in India you can afford to get that made. And B, I realized how much of a problem the latex and the coir mattresses give you later on.
Yeah. Yeah, so the other mattress we have realized is very nice for some shelters, animal shelters, and they need a lot of this as a bedding material. So you could also connect with them. The only thing is you'll have to figure out a way for your mattress to be transported to those guys. So I know Rescue has a couple of these spaces in the city. So you could
Right.
check with them. You
Yeah.
could check with the local kennel pet shelters. You could just check whether they need that because they often require bedding material for that. And there it's more about something being there on floor rather than, you know, uh, in terms of its utility, it has at least some value there.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Next one, I guess, that I always find confusing is, as much as I try to avoid online shopping, it's a part of our lives now, and we need to kind of come to terms with it. But whenever I do, everything comes like in these multiple layers of packaging. There's a cardboard box, there's plastic covers, then there's another kind of plastic covering the product itself. Sometimes also comes filled with other packaging material. What do I do? Where does thermocol go? Where does thermocol go with the plastic in the dry waste? Does it not?
Okay. So most packaging from online shopping is very clean, and by its nature of use, it sustains, you can keep it clean. You don't have to, just don't mix any food waste in it. Like don't put that in the same kachre ka dabba. Keep it separate. Uh, most of it is recyclable. Clear plastics, of course, there is always a market for that. Unless it is a certain type of plastic, which is also kachra. I would say 90% thumb rule is that most of it can be recycled. Thermocol, especially when you're ordering appliances, is a problem. We know that in PMC limits, there is KK Nag who has a program with Swatch called Thermocol. As an organization, we charge for thermocol that people can come and drop off. It's because we actually met a recycler who first removes all the air from the thermocol and gets styrene pellets. So which then again becomes thermocol. So it's a closed loop recycling that we found.
Oh, that's nice.
You can, yeah. So we found him by chance, and we continue to work with him. So if anybody is interested and you're in Barney area, you can come and drop that off. So there are some channels that where we can channelize that.
Right, yeah. Because all my life, I think I've been told repeatedly that thermocol is the worst thing for the environment and never to use it. So even your Ganesh festival decorations, thermocol was a big no-no. But yeah, good to know that there are some innovative solutions coming up, can help. Yeah. I think we've also discussed a couple of these other questions that I had in the process of our conversation so far. Thank you for that. And I'm going to keep throwing some more questions your way. If the listeners have any questions, please do that as well. I think it's just great to have a platform where we can ask there's no silly question, right? We can continue
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
discussion.
Absolutely.
Hey, I don't know where this goes. Does this get recycled? Does this not? But moving on, my next question on this same path is of the life cycle of trash is, while we keep saying it can be recycled, it will be taken away, and that happens. Is there a mechanism at a local governance level that things do get recycled, or how are we faring on that front?
So, a lot of agencies that provide service in local areas tell what they can. It depends on what linkages each one has made. So, and which one is stronger in a certain area will always have more inclination to be able to manage that. So until about the time we stumbled upon this thermocol person, we were also saying, nahi, it can't be recycled. But ever since we figured out what really happens to that, we've had people who are very grateful that we made that linkage. So I think it's also about making those linkages.
Right.
The local governance model doesn't incentivize making these linkages. It should, but it doesn't. And also because they're very loaded, they have like a million things to do. This is really the last thing that's there on their mind. So if you are looking for a hyperlocal solution, so say for example you have old medicines, right? Like what do you do with that? That's also something that we get asked a lot. Yeah. So my suggestion is go to your nearest hospital and just give it to them, because they already have an established system for that. So don't try and reinvent, plug and play, because that
Right.
will be far better, especially for the quantities that we're generating. Jesse, I know that insulin testers, right? It has a
Yeah.
little bit of blood in it. So even that can be kept safely aside. See, these are things that don't smell. You can just give it. Say somebody needs insulin shots. All of that can just go separately. You don't need like a large scale system in your community, because you'll generate very less. So just plug and play for some of those things.
Yeah, biomedical waste can actually be dealt with better because there's a huge mechanism
Correct.
to deal with
Correct.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about how society views waste and its connection to climate change, what would it be?
Perceive things differently for waste. We believe that it's a problem because it's waste, but what if we look at it as a solution for many other things that we don't have today? We don't have soil diversity, so what if we looked at it as an input for soil diversity? What if it could be enabling dignified jobs? What if it could mean a better future for our children? What if it could mean better lives for us? I think really change where we're operating from. Because then the waste management piece is part of the narrative. It's not an exception that we have to aspire and we have to make the connect between us and the earth. We have to make the connect. Actually, we have to find and restore our own lost connection. So look at it at ways by which we can do one thing and we can get a multitude of things in return.
Okay.
And if you look at it like that, I feel why we are looking at waste management will no longer be a very large conversation. The why is already clear, and that era, I feel, such a night it is over. We have to figure out how, and we have to figure out by when we can get it. So be it the real estate developers, be it societies, be it industry, you're seeing everybody being very frustrated with waste being thrown everywhere, and it's really time for all of us to come together. Don't wait for somebody else to put it together. Just come together. Let's just get it going. I think that should be numero uno thing on this.
True. Hamza, thank you so much for an amazing discussion. This has been so enlightening on multiple levels, right? We spoke about individual responsibility, about the systemic responsibility. And yeah, I hope the listeners also found little gems of knowledge that they could implement in their everyday lives. Thank you for your time. I know it has been a very busy schedule. Yeah, and hope to speak to you soon. I'm going to put in resources and links to your work as well. If there's anything further, feel free to reach out to Hamza.
Thanks so much for having me, Sanika, and very lovely questions. Really enjoyed. Felt very nice to have been asked questions in a different light. And I'm so glad we didn't talk about why. I think that era of why asking is really we should go beyond that.
We need to go garbaging.
Yeah, we need to go garbaging.
Yeah, yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you for watching this episode. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We're also available on other social media. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. See you around for the next episodes.